All right. What's going on? How you doing, YouTube? All right, let me turn this on. I'm going to do another episode of Rich the Architect. Let's see, episode 64. All right, new episode. Let's hit record. Feel like the new camera here. And let's get this thing on. Let me actually get a quick drink of water. All right, let's make it official. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Rich the Architect here. And today, I want to talk a little bit, being Rich the Architect, I want to talk a little bit about me. And I want to talk actually specifically of why I chose to be an architect. Going a little bit over this before, probably like episode 0 or whatever. Actually, hold on. Let me turn that off. Jeez. Let me give myself actually an order here a little bit. Let me make sure not to make mistakes like I did last week. Airplane mode, turn off the phone, all that stuff. Okay, there we go. One more thing. No distractions, email off. There we go. All right, now we're good. Got to do all that stuff. So yeah, let me make sure. There we go. Yes, being an architect. So probably in other episodes, and then especially the very first episode, I probably covered a bit of why I wanted to be an architect, all that different stuff. But I wanted to just kind of just dive in. I guess now here I am, 20 some years later. Well, almost even 30 if you kind of equate, the time in college and even in high school where my interest was, kind of sparked to be an architect. Let's just say 30 years later, why am I still being why do I still want to be an architect is really, not why I initially got into it, but here I am 30 years later, why do I still want to do it? So I'm going to jump into that. Let me just, but you know what? Let me take a quick break here and we'll get into it here on the other side. So for YouTube, if I've covered this before in other videos, just putting together my podcast. I want to do a little quick intro there, and add that, and then we will jump back into the audio side for the podcast once it allows me. There we go. Episode 64 intro. Not the most interesting stuff, but this I wanted to, want to show you everything here. So give you a little behind the scenes with that. And all right, let's get back into it here. All right. So, here I am, pretty much 30 years later, not a kid anymore. Not a new, not a young professional. I am currently 46 as of this recording. 46, right? Yes, 46. Have to do the math, getting to that age where I have to kind of think like, well, what am I saying? Am I saying the right thing? Why am I here? Anyway, so why am I still doing this? And I think, the first thing that comes to mind is I do enjoy, the simple act of helping people. One of the things that I really do, if you want to simplify it, forget, actually creating buildings or that, but I'm creating people, I'm actually making people's dreams their reality. And I really enjoy helping people with that. There are, some clients that, that call me, and there's different ends of the spectrum. There's some clients that call me and they'll have a plan, they'll have pictures, they'll be like, we know exactly what we want and all that. Then I have other ones who are like, I've never done this before, we don't know what the steps are, All we know is, if it's a house, we need additional living space, or, we're starting a business and we're doing a restaurant, or doing a hair salon, or a bakery, or whatever it may have been. And, what do we do? Like, how do we get to that point? And it's really satisfying to me to help, like I said, help people get to that point where, I mean, some of my favorite interactions I have, or moments I have as being an architect, is it's usually there's three that come to mind, and actually I'll cover all three. So one is the beginning of the project, right? So, and why I like doing that is, a lot of times, even if I have a client who comes to me with a plan, with pictures and images and a set idea, it's still a blank page. It's very exciting for me, because it's like there's going to be a number of different discoveries along the way, and it's just limitless at that point. So there's, the limitless, the unlimited amount of possibilities is very exciting to me at the beginning of any project. It could be a one bedroom addition to a project, but there's still, until pen to paper, or, that plan is actually laid out, those hundreds, thousands of different options could be, even for just that one simple room. I mean, I could think of one project where that's exactly what the project was. This was last year. Yeah. This project was last year. It's probably around this time when I met the homeowner, and yeah, I mean, there was probably it was probably in the spring, maybe spring, summer. It might've been in the summer, but yeah, they were having I think their parent, the woman's parents were older, and they were going to move in. So it was just a simple, hey, we need to add essentially, a bedroom suite, to the house. And they were like, hey, we want it in the corner of the house. It's going to be 10 by, let's say 15 by 15 foot by 15 foot addition. Well, okay, that's very simple in concept, but it was the corner of the house, but also was very close to the property line. And it actually became very challenging, because it was close to the property line, but the property line was also at an angle. So there was a limit of how far you could go back, how far you could go over. Plus there was a pinch point, because that was the gas meter. I think the gas line was coming into the house, to the, so on the right hand side, if you were looking at the front of the house, there was the property line that was kind of coming closer and closer to the house as you were moving further and further back on the lot. So there was a pinch point there on the right hand side, but on the left hand side was the gas meter and all that. So you could only go a certain amount of distance to the left for that. So then it became a challenge of fitting all of the the bedroom, the bathroom, and the closet. Three very simple things, smaller items, not a huge thing, but still, it became, when you kind of did the math, it would all kind of kind of was all limited in one little area. So it was, it was a challenge, but then it was also, like I said, there were all these possibilities, even for a project that small. That the possibilities could have been, do you build up? What do you do when you're building up? Actually, in this case, it was, there was a bedroom for this woman's older parents. Maybe one was in a wheelchair or something. So going up wouldn't have been an option, actually, now that I think about it. But still, it's those possibilities are endless. And then if I go into any, like a commercial client, like the men's salon that I did, for my one client, Ethos GSFM. I'm probably talked about them before. My client there, who was a friend of mine, he came to me. He actually has a background in architecture and interior design, and he came to me with a very specific plan that he had already worked out, because he actually had very similar skills and a background that I did. Came to me with very, very specific design and ideas, but again, there was still there were some unknowns with that project. I know that he came to me with, he's like, hey, this is what I want. Now, he had a very, very specific aesthetic design ideas and everything for the front of the house spaces, and for the most part, I think the end product is front of house it was very close, almost, or maybe even just pretty much what he wanted. But the challenge to that project ended up actually being what was behind the scenes, like where the office was, how does the bathroom works. But he wanted other things there, but it was it was a very limited space, similar to that residential project, where it was important to him to have laundry there, so he had a washer and dryer to wash his towels, from every day. That was actually when we were first meeting, he had us another space, but it was actually a very small space where it only had like 2 barber chairs. And, it was, he actually had to take the towels that they used every day. He actually had to take out in a bag every day, take them home or take them to a laundromat and wash them every evening. So he was carrying towels in and out of his business every day. So he wanted in this new space to have, an area like a laundry closet and whatnot, but then also there were other needs. He needed that office space that would, he didn't want to just sit in the lounge on a laptop and, do whatever he needed to do for his business. He wanted to have an actual private office. Didn't need to be a huge space, but then also he wanted a break area for his employees. So when you started taking all those needs and adding them up and kind of where he wanted to put them, initially he was like, hey, we'll just put, there's kind of like back area. We'll just make it into like, a bigger room. Well, the really cool thing about that project was, it did have high ceilings. So I was able to actually, sit down with him and taking measurements. We actually, did the scan with the camera and all that stuff that I typically do on projects, where I'm like, hey, look, you got enough headroom space. We could do a loft, put a loft up here so you can have a space, on the first floor, and then have this mezzanine loft and have, additional space up there. And what we ended up doing was, on the main, the first floor was, there ended up being a laundry closet, and I think there was a utility closet for like the electrical and that, and there was a bathroom down there too. But then we were able to work out a space. You go up a couple, a set of steps, and then upstairs in the mezzanine was a little break room, an office, and then there actually ended up being another utility room for like the air handler and things like that were up there. So even though that project had a number of set things that the client came to me with, very, 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 very specific in this case, because it was a client who actually had a background in architecture and design, that, there were still so many other things that needed to be worked out. And, it's funny, I get excited on some projects more for stuff that people don't even see, figuring out how those pieces of the puzzle come together and the solution ends up being something that end user, my client, isn't necessarily even going to think about it. Because if they were thinking about it, it's not good to, like, if you have to every day think about something that you don't like about your space, I didn't do my job right. and it could be something simple to, like I just was mentioning, with the laundry closet and the towels, right? Or it could be something where, and it might be more of this might be more of a maintenance thing, but if your door doesn't open right and it squeaks every time, or you gotta, heck, I got one here. My the one door I come in and out of our building, actually it's rusting at the bottom. The frame is rusting, and so there's there, whether, and that happened because water collected in there at some point, whether it was in the door or in the frame. Well, when metal rusts, it actually expands. So what's happening is the door sticks, and we actually have the door kind of propped open when the ballet school is open. But when I'm here during the day and it's just me, I just keep, the doors closed, but I actually have to kind of, there's like a little, like I have to kind of like kick it or open it in a certain way. Like I just have to tap my foot at the bottom corner where that frame is rusted, so the door can open, but that's not ideal. It's funny. I'm like pointing in that direction right now, but it's not ideal, for that. So that's something that needs to be fixed. But, if it's not working, you're going to, think about it all the time. So really, like I said, it's that first step is just kind of this unlimited type of, unlimited possibilities. And then I kind of just dived into kind of the second part of why of a project that I really enjoy, why I like architecture, or doing, working as an architect. And two is really, I know I've brought this up before, is the time is that point in a project where the kind of ideas are starting to become reality. I always think of, like, so if I have a new build, it's like when I start working with a structural engineer and we start really working out what the framing of a house or a building needs to be. And I've been, actually, it's funny, like right now, there's a number of projects that have been on my board for a very long time. Some of it, has been like the COVID has kind of like stalled it a little bit, but I've been going, at the tail end of projects, I'm working on those details, flashings of roofs and windows, and how things connect and how they, so they don't need, they're not leaking water and things like that. So, but as part of that, I'm looking at structural engineers drawings too, of what the framing members need to be like. So I can just think of a drawing I was working on yesterday where, there was a low roof and a wall that were hitting each other. So really I'm looking at that kind of intersection of the two, and how that's flashed, and how the flashing interacts with the certain type of material that's on the roof versus what, the material that's on the wall, how all that kind of comes together. And those parts of, there's another level of discovery that's happening right there. And it really, like, as I'm solving that problem and figuring out, oh, well, this needs to be, you can have this, right? This, I'm sorry, I'm, on the video, you can see me doing it with my hands, but you can have that roof hitting that wall. And I probably have that situation, hundreds of times on projects. But, what if this is a flat roof? What if this is a sloped roof? That changes the aspect of what needs to happen there. What if this, and materials of that roof? A flat roof is a different material than a sloped roof, right? You have either like shingles versus a membrane product on a flat roof, and then what is on that wall again? Is it stucco? Is it vinyl siding? Is it brick? There's all kinds of different things. So it's a very, there's a common connection of, two building elements, but it can be all kinds of different aspects need to be kind of figured out. And it's really like figuring out and making that reality of, something is a conceptual idea of here's a roof and here's a wall. And then, but then applying those materials and then actually figuring out, and then, making it into a drawing that's conveyed to a contractor who's going to build it and make it real, actually be real. And then, also detailing in a certain way that once the contractor builds it, it functions properly, right? It goes back to the squeaky door or the squeaky door or the stuck door. It's something that they're not going to think about. If the roof is leaking water, I didn't do my job right, right? So but it is taking those kind of ideas that again are conceptual in nature, but have been worked out, like that first step, like the design has been worked out. We have figured out where the spaces are connected to each other. We have the bathroom is in the right spot adjacent to the bedroom, or let's go back to that business that I was talking about. There's that laundry room now adjacent to the main space. If the laundry room was upstairs and they had to lug up, towels every day, that may be a failure in terms of the overall layout. But if the laundry room is where it is, which is right adjacent to the space where they can just take the towels, probably throughout the day, they can just take the towels, and rather than put them in a basket, they may actually just put them right into the washer. At the end of the day, it's one of the things they do is they hit wash, and there you go. But yeah, so there's that overall thing. But then this is that next level, like I said, is like the layout works, but now it's figuring out how it can be built and make that work as well. So that's that kind of second part. But then the last part that's really enjoyable for me on a project is kind of one of the most obvious ones. Is it's when the project is completed and that building is open and my clients are in, they're living in their house now. They are, they've opened their business. They're utilizing the space. It's really fun for me to go to these projects that, more, and this is more of the commercial side. On the residential side, I've visited with clients when I remember I was, about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to take a few pictures of a pretty much completed project, and it was literally like the client was pulling up and moving in their first items into their it's not their new house. It was an existing house that got renovated, but it was a very, very big renovate. Like it was a 1-story house, and we took off the roof, built an entire second floor. So they pretty much moved their entire house out, live somewhere temporarily, and then we're moving their stuff back in when I was there. So it's really cool to be in that space, when they're for the first time, where they're actually starting to use it. I've been to a number of openings for businesses, and I think some of those openings, like somebody, we'd like to thank our architect, blah blah blah. But I've had a number of openings where my client doesn't recognize me or my company, and I'm actually fine with that, because I feel like if there were a number of issues on that project and I was heavily involved, then to fix things or whatever it may be, I become more and more top of mind. And that if I'm kind of like forgotten, it's like that's just tells me that I'm like that, I've done my job in some cases there too, because if I wouldn't say they forgot about me, but it's like they're like, oh well, we don't think this person, that person. But I almost see it as more of a compliment than somebody just forgetting about me. So, but it's really cool to go into some of these spaces when people are in there, they're enjoying it, and they may not be talking to me, but I may overhear something that's like, oh man, this space is really great because of blah, 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 this and that. And I'm kind of just I can just sit there in my mind and be like, oh, I did that. It's a really cool feeling. And, like I said, it's just great to kind of be part of that process of, helping someone or a company really get, take these ideas and then just, go with it, and, it becomes a reality. And I just, so I think if we just go back to the simple point of like why I'm still doing architecture, it's just that simple idea of like being able to help people. And to be quite honest, it can be lost in a day-to-day basis. There are days, there are tough days that, there are days where I'm just like, why am I, I could be selling ice cream or something like that. But I do know, if I kind of like take it to the flip side, if I quit this and try to do something else, at least right now, that I know that there in the back of my head, I'd just be like, no, like, I would always be like, well, what if I would have just stuck with it and stuff like that? So, there's that end of it. So I know this is definitely what I want to do, what I still want to do. There's obviously different things that down the road, like I think there's growing pains, things like that. There's that I've identified, I've talked about in a lot of detail on other episodes here on this podcast. But it's definitely something that I want to keep continuing to do. I will say, just to kind of wrap this up, let me just make sure. Yeah. Okay. And kind of is, moving forward, I live in South Jersey, right? And, when I'm always like networking things and stuff, and I got to do like a 30-second spiel, I always say I'm kind of the center point between Philadelphia and Atlantic City, which, is Southern New Jersey. And I, serve points, on those two ends and anywhere in between. I can reach further, but that's basically my primary area. But I will say, like, recently, I've talked about, I have like a hobby farm, and I really enjoy. This past week, I've had some issues with my tractor, and I've had to go to this tractor store twice now. And where I have to drive is in southern New Jersey. If people here listening, if you've never been to New Jersey, I think there's this idea, like the New Jersey, I think the general public who've never been to New Jersey or just kind of driven through have just done that. They've been like on the Jersey Turnpike, in spots just adjacent to that. But there's a lot of New Jersey that's there's a joke, like especially here in South Jersey, that we're like pretty much like Nebraska. And it's very true. I mean, there's a reason why it's called the Garden State. There's a lot of farms where I live. I'm kind of like right on the edge of more condensed areas. And then, but as you move south, kind of south and west, actually, from where I'm at, it just completely opens up. And there's a rodeo and, just farmland. There's a lot of farmlands here. If you kind of go east towards the shore, actually, it's more what they call the Pinelands. Like if you've ever seen, there's a Sopranos episode where, who is it? Christopher and I think Paulie, there's a Russian guy, they go into the Pine Barrens, right? And they try to dump the guy into the woods. They thought they killed him, but they didn't. That's actually pretty much where I live. I do live in the Pine Barrens. Like I'm right where the boundary is, where that starts. And, it's huge. It's like a natural, forest. So there's probably some farmlands there, but it's a lot of it's pine woods, really. But it's, it's protected habitats and things like that. More like creeks, and then eventually the bay and the shore. But if you kind of go a little bit more south and west, it's just straight up, like you're driving and it's just, orchards and things like that. Like you would not, there's a lot of people don't think that's New Jersey, but it is. And it's, but there's something about that farm area that really, I grew up in central Pennsylvania, so and my grandparents had a farm. So, I was around that a little bit, but there's something about that these farm areas that really is attracted to me. And, you know, I actually had about a year or so ago a client where I designed a barn for them. They had like kind of like a fruit stand, you know, farm side, you know, roadside fruit stand. And they needed a barn for different things, and did that project. Heck, I've done my own barn project, you know, for my own property, and you know, those are actually some, you know, projects I'd like to get more and more into. And, you know, I'm actually kind of thinking, you know, even if I wanted to like move my office into a facility at some point, you know, besides where I'm at right now, that the that may be what I want to, you know, that might be more of an area that I'd like to move into. So we'll see where that goes. But, you know, in terms of helping people, you know, I think that's the main thing that really drives me, you know, just keep doing architecture. So I'm gonna end it right there. And yeah, hope everybody's doing well. And until next time, this is Richard Architect. I'm signing off. See ya. Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna keep this stream just going for 1 second because I felt like I was a little limited with my podcast. So I can only go 30 minutes at a time. I was almost there, so I wanted to finish that up. But yeah, I guess it's the bonus episode. You know, I don't know. You know what? I think I'm going to ramble on and on a little bit, so I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah. So I appreciate anybody out there who's been watching these or listening to these. I did get this new camera. I don't know if you realized that or not, but I got this new camera for doing this. So yeah, appreciate everybody out there. I'll sign off here, and until next time, Richard Architect. See you.